What's going on, everybody? This is the host of Recover Out Loud podcast, Sean Young. Before we dive in, I want to be clear. I'm not a medical professional. I'm not here to diagnose or treat. I'm simply a catalyst, someone who's walked through the fire and now speaks from experience, reflection, and a deep desire to help others find their way forward. This podcast may include honest conversations about addiction, mental health challenges, and suicidal thoughts or ideations. These are real parts of the human experience, and we won't shy away from them. If you're listening, please do so with self-care and self-awareness. And if you're struggling, please reach out. There's help out there. And most importantly, there's hope. Viewer discretion is advised. Now let's get it. What is going on, everybody? Welcome to Recover Out Loud podcast. Today, we bring you episode 102, man. We're 2 episodes over the hump of 100, and that's awesome. Super excited. It's something to be celebrated. But today, we got a really awesome guest. We got Mr. Antoine Evans. How you doing, brother?
I'm doing pretty good. How you doing?
Man, like I was saying before we hit record, I'm tired as hell. And but it's just another day in paradise.
Facts.
Absolutely. And so, Antoine, what would you like to give a formal introduction of yourself?
Like you said, my name's Antoine Evans. In other words, preacher. Some people call me preacher. A lot of people, and as I tell my story today, I'll tell how I got that nickname. But a lot of people, just in the recovery world, outside of I'm a supervisor and a peer advocate at a place called Finger Lakes Area Counseling and Recovery Agency, FLACRA, in upstate New York. And so there they call me Antoine, but like outside of the actual like agency recovery work, people know me as preacher. Have a bachelor's in Christian ministry with a minor in church ministries. Have 2 masters, one in Christian apologetics, one in child and adult development, and then a certificate in visual arts. Like I said, I do a lot in the recovery world, online, on Facebook. Have a podcast of my own called Preacher's Corner, where we like to motivate and inspire other people to make a change, not only in their life, but the lives of others. And then I'm writing a book about leadership. And then I'm working on a 90-day health, wellness, and fitness journal for people who are, it's kind of for people who are in recovery or people who have been through some stuff that are looking to just dive back into health and really refocus their mind. And so it's set up in 3 different sets almost. First on basically dropping the weight, getting rid of stuff, building up a new habits, and then sculpting those. And so that's me in a nutshell.
Nice, man. You're a man of many hats.
Absolutely.
And those hats keep you sober, and that's the most important.
Facts.
Absolutely. So before we dive in, when Antoine and I started talking, he was looking at the channel and he was like, "Oh, you interviewed Jared Blaine?" I was like, "Yeah, man." I was like, "Jared's like one of my good friends." He's like, "Oh, he lives down the street." And so like, yeah. I didn't tell you this, so this is like a first impression kind of thing. But I called Jared. I was like, "Oh, I'm interviewing Antoine Evans." He's like, "Oh shit, really?"
I love Jared.
I love Jared too. He's a great dude, man, and he's, I'm glad that he's doing a lot better than he has been.
Absolutely.
Yeah, absolutely. So, Antoine, you want to go ahead and we'll dive into your story real quick?
Definitely.
All right, man. Go ahead.
Sounds good. So, like I said, I gave all those things about what I'm doing today, and so and what's funny is I over the last couple of days, because like tonight I'm giving my story. I just started, so I took a step back from doing online stuff for a couple months just so I can refocus and get my mind like just trained back in, and so. Um, One thing that I said that I want to start doing is telling my story, and so uh, I also was like, let me start going to groups online, and so I started going to this one A group at 9:15 on Zoom, and I'm actually getting to tell my story tonight um, on there, and then um, Wednesday I'm going to the local homeless shelter, which is where I used to work prior to addiction and prior to being a student pastor. And they have like a recovery breakfast, and I get to share my story there. And so I'm like, you know what? Maybe I should sit down and write down everything so that I at least have like, okay, I'm not. Because sometimes you hear people telling their stories and they're jumping all over, and they get to one point they're like, oh wait, a couple years ago I did this, like,
Yeah.
and so it's all like segmented. So I was like, let me write stuff down just so at least I have a working order. And I just realized like, man, I've been through some shit.
Yeah.
Like, and so, um, like I love the things that I've been through. Like, not that I've been through. I love the things that I'm doing now. Um, but I am um, I'm a product of the results of like where I am today are because of the things that I've been through. Um, and ultimately those things led me to addiction, which is why we're here. Like, and so um, I ended up losing everything because of addiction. And like I said, I was a student pastor. Ended up stepping down from being a student pastor um, after falling into that addiction. I got clean on April 13th of 2024. And I fell into, and I'll go like along the lines, but I fell into addiction after I had separated from my wife and kids, and so I lost my wife and kids, and a lot of people when they hear like, oh, you're going through a divorce and your kids don't talk to you, they think it's because of the addiction, but I'm like, no, it was everything prior to addiction, and addiction was just like that capstone where they're like, ah, you just proved everything, every reason why we're not talking to you. And so uh, I am a firm believer of our addiction. Like, it doesn't just, no one wakes up in the morning one day, they're like, you know what, let's get addicted.
Yeah.
It's a segmented, these segmented events and circumstances that lead us to that point of addiction. And like I was even as I was writing this, I was talking to one of my good friends, and I told her I was like, uh, it's really a collection of bad choices and bad situations that lead us to this moment. And like as I get into the addiction part of my story, like it's just I used to ask myself like how can someone go so far down, and that's the exact thing. Like you look back and you're like, wow, I see the slow progress towards that addiction. And so like for me, I I would have never thought that I would have gotten into addiction. Uh, I was born June 7th, 1987. I'm 38. My parents, they met in Korea. They were both in the army, and so they met in Korea. I was conceived in Korea. Um, then my mom found out that she was getting stationed at. Hold on, let me throw my do not disturb. I just got a notification. I was like, let me throw do not disturb up real quick. Um, I got a so my mom found out she was going to Fort Gordon, Georgia. And so my dad was getting out of the military, and so he moved to Georgia, to Augusta, Georgia, got a job as a police officer. And then my mom soon after met him in Georgia. And so I was conceived in Korea, born in Fort Gordon, Georgia. And so I was born. My dad was a cop. My mom was still in the Army. And so when I was a year old, it was July, I want to say July 6th, about a month after my birthday. He was working, and the different people in the locker room, they were talking about how their guns sounded. And they were like, oh, my gun sounds like this, my gun sounds like this. And one of them was like, my gun sounds like this, and forgot to unload his weapon, and it shot my dad, and it killed my dad. Yeah. And dude felt so bad that like he went to jail and felt terrible for what he had done, because he left my mom and I without my dad. And so my mom and dad, or my mom and I, we stayed in Georgia for a little bit, but my mom, like, she couldn't do it by herself, and they wanted to send her, because she was still in the military, they wanted to send her on an unaccompanied tour to Germany. And she's like, no, like, I just lost my husband. I'm not sending my son to, like, live with somebody. And while my dad was alive, I guess they were having problems, and he had threatened a couple times to leave and take me and go. And what's funny is my mom's family, or his family, was from Buffalo, and my mom's mom and her stepdad lived in Geneva, New York, which is like 2 hours away. So both sets of grandparents lived like in which is crazy, because they met in Korea.
Yeah.
And lo and behold, their families are right near each other. And so she was like, I don't want to leave him with my dad's mom, because she was afraid she would never see me again. And she didn't want to leave me with her mom. And so she's like, you know what? Like, she talked to the military, and they let her out on a hardship discharge. And so, like I said, we stayed there for a little bit, and then she said, I can't do this, keep doing this by myself. And so we ended up moving to Geneva, New York, when I was like 2 or 3. And that way she was in the same town as her mom and stepdad, and then 2 hours away she had my other grandparents. And so she ended up, when we got to Geneva, she met my who's my dad now. I call him my dad because they've been married since like 1991. So I was 4 years old when they got married. So he's my dad. He's been my dad for 34 years. So he's Italian. I like to say I'm Italian by marriage. I've been in the culture longer than some Italians. So,
Hey.
like, I remember Christmas, we'd go to my grandma's. She'd be up all day cooking, and it'd be gone in like 2 seconds. And we'd have Stromboli waiting for us when we come into Pittsburgh and everything. Like, so, and hearing you say Boston earlier, I was like, Boston.
Yeah, I interviewed. Yeah, well, I interviewed a guy earlier today who played for the Red Sox, and I was going to troll him and wear a Yankees hat.
That would have been hilarious.
Yeah.
So, my mom met him, and what's funny about that is my grandparents like to say that, or my grandpa, he passed probably like 7 to 8 years ago. He used to say that it was because of him that they met, because they knew my dad prior to us moving there. They were in a couple committees and things like that. And so we ended up meeting him. They dated for a while, and then they ended up getting married. And he jokes that, like, when we first met, he didn't know what I would say because I'd talk like gibberish. And so I'd be like, no, and he'd be like, what's he saying? And my mom would be like, oh, he said this. My dad's like, how do you know? My dad had a full set of hair when he first met us. I like to joke and say now that he's bald, it's because he met us. Uh, and I was one of the big culprits towards his hair falling out. But yeah, we met my dad. Um, and what's cool about that is just I've been um, I won like any racial tension and things like that that other people feel. I haven't, because I'm like my family has always been blended, black and white and all over the place. And then I I've always had like my whole family, even like my mom had a stepdad, and my mom's dad was married to someone else, and then like so there's all this. It wasn't just like blood in my family, and so I really um, learned what it meant to have family, um, and not just like blood is family. I learned that like you don't have to be blood to call people family, and
Yeah,
so
like Toretto,
what's that?
like Dom Toretto.
Absolutely, absolutely. Family is more about values
Yeah,
and who you have surrounding you rather than what comes. I mean, we all bleed
yeah,
red, so at the end of the day, we're all family.
yeah,
And so, I remember like my grandma was my dad, my biological dad's mom was afraid that like, oh man, here comes the white man, like, and he's about to take my grandkid away. I'm not going to see my grandkid. My
mm,
dad's like, no, it's your
yeah,
son's kid. I'm not going to stop you from seeing him. And
yeah,
so it's almost like my mom became their daughter and my dad became their stepson. And I used to go there, like go to Buffalo during the summer to spend a couple weeks with my grandma. And what I really saw was like my grandma, even though my brother and sister weren't her like blood, she if she sent me $20, she sent them $20.
yeah,
And it was never like, oh, he's my grandson because he's blood and you guys aren't. And so it was just a whole blended family. Even my cousins weren't blood because of the fact that my grandma and grandpa had remarried and he had his own kids prior to them getting married. Um, so my dad died. We moved to Geneva. I went through my years up until seventh grade. Uh, it was a little awkward just because I used to like to say I was the black sheep of the family,
yeah,
uh, and so it was a little awkward just not being around. Um, I don't want to say like, oh, it was bad not being around black people,
yeah.
but it definitely was. I felt at times I was too white for the black people and too black for the white people, and
I
so
get
I was like like where do I fit in? And
yeah,
so like one thing you'll notice just as I go through the story is just this thread of like rejection and trying to find a place. Uh, See, I get emotional. This is why I don't tell my story.
all right, man. This is a
um,
place. Go
so
ahead.
there's this thread of just rejection and not fitting in anywhere,
Yeah,
uh, and looking for peace in all these places. And so it's like looking back, it's like of course I fell into addiction. Like I'm searching for peace and belonging, and when you're doing that, it's almost like a recipe for addiction to come. Um, and so I was trying to find like where do I fit in and things like that, and then all of a sudden my family, my dad uplifts us and we moved to Pennsylvania, and so I'm like, okay, well, here's a new start, and
yeah,
so I meet a couple friends and everything, and we're living in Pennsylvania, and then the middle of eighth grade, it was I don't know if you remember the Y2K scare.
yep.
So it was the middle of my eighth grade year, and we had turned the clock. Like everybody had to unplug everything, um, and so everybody's talking about, yeah, I can't wait to come back, and I'm thinking I'm not coming back, like because we're moving back to New York, and so uh, And what's crazy is little did we know a year later, like we wouldn't even care about Y2K because September
No.
11th happened. And so I we moved back to New York, and I think that took a hit because I finally in Pennsylvania found a place that I belonged. And so there that rejection goes. Um, and I think one thing I've talked about with like therapists is that a lot of things in my life happened, and not that I want people to come and be like, "Hey, Antoine, are you okay with this?"
Yeah.
But a lot of things happened that were out of my control, and that were like huge in my development. From my dad dying, from my mom remarrying, and then she has 2 kids with him, and so like all these things are happening where I'm like yo, I'm here. And then as more stuff happens, it seems like I get pushed further and further back. And so we move from Pennsylvania back to New York. Um, and then I start high school, and that everybody knows like high school is awkward in and of itself.
Yeah.
And so here I was, this awkward high schooler, and I was in drumline and concert band, and so I'm a drummer. So I loved that's really something I used to escape was my music. Um, and so I was always in the band room, always playing drums, always hanging out with my friends. We would play Yu-Gi-Oh and things like that. And so I really one thing the report cards would always say is student is disruptive but a pleasure to have in class. And my mom's like, how?
Yeah.
Like, how are you disruptive and a pleasure to have in class? Like, and so one thing I really prided myself off of was my sense of humor. And that's how I really pushed a lot of like brokenness down. And I was always staying in my room, and I felt just like because my sister was born, then my brother was born, and I felt everybody was focusing on them. And so like as I got older, I got pushed down the hall in our upstairs, and then when my brother was born, then I got pushed up in the attic to a furnished part of the attic. So it just felt like okay, like as more stuff happens, I'm just getting pushed further and further away. And so I graduate, and I went to community college for music recording. And so I was doing music recording for a little bit, but then I started getting into like I had a little bit of freedom. And so I was part of the radio club and things like that, and then I started like meeting other people. And so I started hanging out with people. And I remember one time I was hanging out with one of my buddies who I'm still friends with today. And what's funny is his name's Antoine as well. And so I call myself A1 and I call him A2 because I'm the better looking one. And he loves wrestling. Like he actually, because I watched a couple of your stuff, and I know how big you are into wrestling. And so in Rochester, New York, and Henrietta, New York, they have like an amateur wrestling, and he hosts and he helps plan like the different like storylines and things like that. And so I'm definitely going to tell him to check out your podcast. And so him and I were hanging out with a couple more people, and that day my mom had told me that I needed to come home. I forget what it was for, but she told me I needed to come home that day. And so I was like, yeah, whatever. Like I'm in college. I'm going to do what I want. So I was hanging out with my friends. Definitely didn't go home. And at this point, my parents had kept telling me, like, you need to get a job. You need to get a job. You need to get a job. And I'm like, whatever you say. Not going to get a job. Why get a job when, like, I have all my friends who want to party? So I was hanging out with them, didn't go home. The next day, my mom called me, and she's like, where were you? And I was like, oh, I was hanging out. Like, we're still here. She said, you need to get home now, or when you get home, you won't have a home, basically. And I was like, yeah, okay. So I kept hanging out with my friends. I ended up getting a ride back that night. It was, and I remember this like it was yesterday. It was homecoming. It was raining that night, and I walk in to the house. It's probably around, I would say, probably around 5 o'clock because the homecoming game hadn't started yet. And so I go upstairs and sit down, and I had one of the OG Xboxes. I bought that with my, instead of buying a laptop, which I should have, since I'm in college. With my graduation money, I bought an Xbox. Uh, Priorities. Uh, I think my priorities were spot on. Uh,
I agree.
and so I go and I sit down and I start playing. And my dad comes up and he's like, "What are you doing?" I was like, "Playing Xbox." And he's like, "Your mother told you had to leave." Um, and I mean, the conversation could have been different. This is how I see it, but it was raining, and I was like, "Are you serious? Like, it's raining outside," and they were serious. And so I pack up my stuff, what I can, and I went to my buddy's house, and his mom let me stay in there, and so we ended up going to the homecoming game that night. But then, like, eventually, I was there. I was at his house for, I'd say, a couple weeks, and then my grandparents reached out to them, and my grandparents lived right down the road from them, and I ended up going and staying with them. And little did I know, my parents told my grandparents, don't get involved, because my parents, their goal was that I would get to the point of being like, man, I can't do this by myself, and reach out to them, and they were trying to teach me a lesson, and they were going to eventually let me move back in, but then my grandparents stepped in, and so I never learned that lesson, and so my parents stopped talking to my grandparents, and they wouldn't let my siblings talk to my grandparents, and so um, I really didn't think about that. I think a lot of times the things that we do, we don't think of how our consequences affect other people, or our actions affect other people. And so here I am, this 19-year-old kid, um, just like, okay, like, whatever, and just kept living my own life. And my grandma would give me rides to school. I have friends give me rides to school, and I could do whatever I wanted basically at my grandparents. They let me come in when I wanted. I had my own little, like, TV area. Like, I was living at large. Had my own room. Like, it was nice. And so uh, I remember, though, one time my grandma had asked me to come home to do something. Same scenario that happened with my mom, and so I was like, yeah, okay. Never came home.
Yeah.
And so um, I came back that night. I came home that night, but it was way after my grandma needed me. And so I came home, went upstairs, went to bed. In the morning, I came down, and my grandparents were always at the table, bright and early, eating breakfast, drinking coffee, reading the newspaper like old people do. Uh, and so I sit down and I start eating breakfast. I was like, "Can I get a ride to school?" And my grandpa was like, "I'll give you a ride." And so we go outside, and we're sitting there, and he's not moving the car. And I'm like, "I need to go." Like,
Yeah.
school is coming up, and he doesn't say anything, and we're just sitting there. And then he's like, "Your grandmother asked you to do one thing," and he's like, "Your grandmother asked you to do one thing, and you couldn't even do that." He's like, "We don't ask you to do anything. You can do whatever you want, and all she asked you to do is one thing, and you didn't." And with that, he's like, your parents, your siblings can't even talk to us because of you, and you couldn't do one thing for your grandmother." And that broke me. Because I remember I'm like part of the joy of growing up was being able to go to my grandparents, and I'm like here I am like not being able like not my siblings can't experience that because here I am, and so like I wasn't talking to my parents because I was just holding on to so much from them having kicked me out, and that like just furthered that feeling of rejection and trying to find a place to belong in. So here I was, I went from my parents to my friends to my grandparents in a matter of like 6 months. And so I made the choice. I was like, you know what, I'm moving uh, to the town where I go to school at. And so I moved, and my buddy and I, who A2, uh, him, I, and a couple more guys got an apartment, and so I was living there. And once I got there, it was a wrap. Like I was smoking weed all the time, wasn't really going to classes. I'd go to campus, but I'd hang out in the atrium and we like laughing and joking and everything. And then I met my ex fiance at the time. And uh, her and I were always together. If she wasn't at my place, I was at her parents. And we were always together. And so by the time school ended that year for college, they sent me a letter, and they're like, I had failed terribly, and they were like, "We're kicking you out, but if you want to come back, you can write a letter and basically convince us why we should let you back." And I was like, "I don't want to come back." So I was like, "Why would I write a letter?" So she was still doing classes and everything. So her and I moved back to the town that I was from, and we got an apartment there together. And so her stepdad worked at a glass factory in town, and so he got me a job there. So I was working there during the summer, and one day they came up and they were like, "Hey, tomorrow's your last day," and I was like, "What?" They're like, "Yeah, this was a summer job." I was like, "Come on." And so I went home that night and I told her, I was like, "I'm joining the army." And she was like, "What?" And I was like, "Yeah, I'm joining the army." And mind you, my uncle at the time was in the military. He ended up retiring from the army. My mom, my dad met in the army. Uh, my stepdad, who, like I said, I call dad, his dad, my grandpa, was in the Marines. Uh, my mom's stepdad, he was in the army. Like, so it was just a like it was a no question. Like I didn't think about it or anything. As soon as I thought army, I was like, yeah, that makes sense. So I ended up going to the recruiter, signing up. Was supposed to leave. Um, I was supposed to leave October of 2006. I was supposed to leave October 2006, but when went, I had bronchitis, so they sent me home. I went to Syracuse, New York, to fly out, and my recruiter had driven an hour and a half all the way back home. They called him and they're like, "Yeah, he's not leaving. He has to like get cleared from the doctors before we can let him leave." So he had to drive all the way back to pick me up. So then I started working for my grandpa. He had a windows and doors business. Started working for him during that month because I didn't have a job because I thought I was leaving for the military. And so here I am for a month. I have no job. So I started living with my parents, working for my grandpa. And then the day came in November for me to leave. So my recruiter drives me all the way back to Syracuse. They're like, "You need a doctor's note." So he had to drive all the way back to Syracuse to pick me up. And what's funny is, and I'll say the last part after. So then my mom, she comes home and I'm sitting on the couch and she's like, I was like, "I need a doctor's note." So she was like, "Okay." So she called the doctors. We went and picked up the doctor's note that day, and we told the recruiter like, "Hey, we're good." And so he comes and he picks me up and we go, and I finally am able to ship out to basic. But what's funny is in October, when I left from the recruiting station, my grandparents were there, my siblings were there, my parents were there, everybody was there. It was like emotional, tears, everything. Second time, it was my parents and my siblings. Third time, my mom was like, make sure to lock the door when you leave. Like, everybody was like, just go finally. So finally, I leave, do basic training. While I'm in basic training, I find out that I was going to be going to Iraq because the commander, I went as military police. The commander of our basic training unit was best friends with the commander in Fort Bragg, North Carolina, and he's like, whoever's going to Fort Bragg, just know you guys are deploying in December. And so then I found out I was going to Fort Bragg. So I was like, oh, great. Like, which I'm kind of glad for, because when we were training in basic training, that actually, I'm not just thinking like, oh, I might deploy. I was like, no, at the end of this year, I'm on my way to Iraq. And so I ended up getting out of basic training, went to Fort Bragg, North Carolina. As soon as I got there, we started doing training and things like that for Iraq. And so December of 07, or no, yeah, December of 07, we left for Iraq. Or November, because we were there for 15 months. So it was November we left for Iraq. We were in Kuwait during Christmas of 2007. And then we went from Kuwait to, our company went to Mahmadiyah, Iraq. My platoon, we went to this tiny town called Yusufia, Iraq. And so we were there in Iraq. Didn't see much action. And so we were able to go through that, come out. We were actually there during the time when we handed elections back over to Iraq. And so we were part of the outer perimeter to make sure we had to stay a distance away so that we were free from influence from their elections. But we were part of the outer security just to make sure nothing bad happened. We ended up, we lived at what's called the JSS. It was a joint security station. And they started shutting those down because they were starting to do the process of starting to pull troops out. And so a lot of the bases we were starting to hand over to the Iraqi army and the Iraqi police. And so they gave us an option. They were like, you can either go with the rest of your company in Mahmadiyah, or you can go to BIOP, which is Baghdad International Airport. You can either go there and wait for your company to come there for when you guys leave. So our platoon sergeant and platoon leader were like, well, don't want to go with the company. So we're going to meet them there. So we were there for about 5 months waiting for the company, which I had so much money saved up. And then we got there because there was PX. They call BIOP. They used to call it the land of the big PX, because there was a huge PX. And that's where, like, when you see, like, back in those times, like 2005 to like 2009, when you see, like, oh, Tim McGraw goes to Iraq, or like you have these artists going to Iraq, they would always go to BIOP because that was the most secure. You didn't have to wear gear. We had the Ethiopians running the gates and things like that. So it was like regular life moving around. And so we were there. We ended up, like, everybody, our company came. When I was there, I don't know if you remember MySpace. I had a MySpace, and I met this one girl, and she lived in Norman, Oklahoma. And so I was supposed to be getting out of active duty. It was supposed to be March. April. It was supposed to be April. I was supposed to be getting out of the army, but they have what's called stop loss, and so and you can't. You need 3 months before you can to come out and, I guess, like de-warize or whatever. Like they don't want to just like bring somebody from the war zone and be like, go back into society.
Yeah.
So they're like, even if you like, because I was supposed to get out, like I said, in so we got back in January, February, March. We got back in March. I was supposed to get out in like April or May, but they were like, no, we need you to wait until June to get out. And so, because we need you here for 3 months just to demilitarize. And so I started, as soon as I got back, I started the out processing process of the Army. And so, when we had our leave from after coming back, I went to Norman, Oklahoma, met this girl in person, got an apartment, found a job, and so I got a job at Dollar General as a manager, a third key manager, and I told them, look, I won't be back until June because I'm still in the Army, but I'm moving back this date, and they're like, okay, perfect. So I did all the paperwork, and they put my start date for June. So I already had a job in place, already had an apartment by the time I left. So then I go back, get out of the active duty, and move to Norman, Oklahoma. While I'm there, I'm with this girl, and she eventually leaves me, and that was crazy because I would always call her before I would come home. I didn't have a car, and it was right around the corner, so I would always call her before I would come home. And so I called her, and it just kept ringing. And I'm like, why is this phone like still ringing? The days of landline. I'm like, it should like be picking up at least on the voicemail. No voicemail picked up. So I'm like, well, maybe she's on the phone and she just like it's important. Yeah. So I finished counting the drawer and everything, and I walk home. We used to have like a coat rack, and I would hang up my coat when I walk in, and I went and I let go, and it just dropped on the ground. I was like, maybe she moved the coat rack. And I turn on the light, and there's no coat rack. There's nothing except a futon, and she even took the cat. And I'm like, wow. You took the cat? Like, come on. So I ended up getting roommates. But it was too much. And then I met this lady on Plenty of Fish, and started talking with her. And she lived in Rochester, New York, about an hour away from where I was from. And so prior to getting out, my buddy lived in Buffalo, and he'd be like, yo, bro, I'm getting out of the Army. He's like, just move back. Like, we can be cool. Like, we can hang out and stuff like that. I'm like, nah, I'm good. I'm moving to Oklahoma. And worst decision of my life. And so, well, I mean, prior to getting addicted to drugs.
Yeah.
And so I go and I meet this lady in person, and we're living at her aunt's house. And it's me, her 3-year-old son, and this tiny room at her aunt's house that has her aunt, her uncle, and her 3 cousins. and then her little sister, and like just it's chaos all the time. So I'm on unemployment, and I'm like, you know what? I had gone to visit my parents, and that's when I got unemployment. And I was like, you know what? We're gonna get out of this house. I can't take living in this place because, like, I bought the 3-year-old a PlayStation for Christmas, and her cousins were getting irritated because like their mom didn't buy them a PlayStation, and so like there was a lot of just tension at times. And then everybody would like I don't want to call it the hood culture, but drinking every night and on the weekends drinking and partying and playing spades, and that's how life was every weekend. And so we ended up moving into our own place, and started getting pretty serious. And I started working at, I don't know if you've ever heard of Aaron's. It's like Run a Center. So I started working at Aaron's. I was doing sales. I was doing accounts. I was doing delivery. I was everything, doing everything. And it's crazy. I'd get in, they'd be like, "Hey, hop on calls." I'd hop on calls, and they'd be like, "Hey, we just got a truck. Unload the truck and set up the floor." Then they'd be like, "Hey, can you handle that sale?" Then hey, we need this delivered. So I was like all over all the time. And so I was working there, and while I was there, I started talking to one of the customers, and her and I ended up sleeping together. And I don't remember how this happened, but it turned out where she was the sister of my wife's cousin. And so they had same dads but different moms. And her cousin, like her cousin, his mom was her mom's sister, but his sister had different moms. So she was no relation to to who eventually became my wife. At this time, she was just my girlfriend. Um, and so I had ended up sleeping with her, and it got to the point where she's like, "Yo, like, are you gonna be with me?" And I was like, "No, like, I still want to stay with her." And so she goes and tells her brother what's happened. And so after I told her, "No, I don't want to be with you. I want to stay with her," I go home and I start like, because during that time we were distant, my wife and I. And so I went home and I was like trying to be closer. And I remember the night she found out, we had just got done watching a movie, and she gets a call and she answers it. She's like, "Oh," and says hi to her cousin. And I'm like, I knew as soon as I heard that it was her cousin. And so she turns it on speaker. She goes in the kitchen to get something, and I hear, because he used to call her mom, and he said, "Are you sitting down, mom?" And she said, "No." He's like, "You might want to sit down." And as soon as he said that, like my gut just dropped, and I was like, I started like, when someone doesn't know what to do and they're just walking around
Yep.
like trying, like picking stuff up and setting it down, like I was
Cases
like
hot shit.
frantic, like what
Yeah.
what do I do? And so I put my shoes on and I left. And I went by work and slept by the dumpster.
Damn.
Like I'm like, I don't know what to do. So I just said I'm leaving.
Yeah.
The next day she showed up to my job and was outside. "What the fuck is going on? What are and so like she was like, we're done. We're done. I can't do this." And I just remember hearing her cry, like, and it just broke me. And because all I wanted from the time of being a kid was to feel, like I said, to find a place to belong. And I found, I was like, the best way to belong is to have a family. And so when I found her and she had her son, I was like, I have a family. And then I'm like, my own actions like fucked that up. And so we there was tension. She ended up forgiving me. And then eventually in 2000, that was 2012, or 2010, 2012, we ended up getting married. And so there was still tension, because of everything. And so we'd argue, and she, from the moment we got married, she'd say, "I want a divorce," and she would take the rings off at times. And we always had tension because of what I had done in the past. And so it got to the point where it was just tension all the time. And there were moments that were good, but it was just tension all the time. And so I remember one time, so I was working at Aaron's. They eventually let me go because the key the lock and key got left on the back of one of the trucks, and nobody took the key out, and the truck got broken into. Okay. And so they were like, "Unfortunately, everybody who was at the back door, we have to let go." And so I ended up getting a job at a pizza place and was working there for a little bit, and then started working at a call center But while I was at the call center, I was in the reserves at this time. They wanted me to go to armor because they couldn't find any military police units. So they're like, you can either reclass to engineer or we can send you to armor school, and then you're just attached to headquarters. So I was like, that's probably the easier bet. So I went to armor school. When I got there, they had orders written for me and everything. I got there, the armor school didn't see that I was registered for the class. So I had to go all the way back. I went from Fort Drum all the way back home, which was like 3 hours. And I'm like, look, my wife and I were looking forward to having 2 weeks of active duty pay, which was like, it was probably a good like 1,500 more than what I was making regularly. And so I was like, we were looking forward to this, and now we don't have it. Is there a way that I can at least do my 2 weeks here at the unit? And so the unit administrator, he was also in the unit. I was like, "Oh, Sergeant, can I please?" And he was like, "I got you." He's like, "You have to bring the car back though, but I got you." And so I stayed at my parents' because they lived right around the corner from it. And so while I was there going during those 2 weeks, I heard that I could do college and get paid for it. And so I looked into it, and I sure as heck found out I can not only get college for free because of GI Bill, but I can get paid for it. And so I quit my job, and first registered for classes to do international business, and then quit my job. And so I was doing full-time school, and my grades were like unbelievable. I was doubling up on classes. I went for international business. My thought was, why be in the top when I could be at the top? And I wanted to do like consulting for companies going overseas. And I was thinking like, okay, let's say I do a service that charges $10,000, and here you have 5 companies that are making $50,000 a piece. If I'm charging $10,000 and those 5 companies utilize me, they have $40,000 now, and I have $50,000. And so that was my thought pattern, was I can be at the top. And so all my grades, I was always at the top of the class. Was on Dean's List every semester. Got on like the high honor rolls, and so I was really doing good. And then my wife and I, on September 11th of 2015, and I remember because my dad did a speech. They have a September 11th memorial at the community college, and they were opening it up for the first time, and my dad did a speech. And so I remember her and I had an argument because I was going to campus, and mind you, I had cheated. So the worst place for me to go was a college campus that had a bunch of 18-year-olds running around, and I'm like, "Ooh, okay." And so there was tension just all the time. And so she was like, either you leave or me and the kids are going to leave. And at this time, we were taking care of her sister's youngest, who is now a baby. So we have this baby. We have this kid who's in 5th grade, her son, Dominic, my stepson. And so I was like, I'm not going to make you and 2 kids leave, so I'll leave. So I started living out of my car. I was working at a pizza place, going to classes, and that just asked for a bad scenario. So my grades started plummeting, and I started drinking myself to sleep at night. And a lot of people would be like, "Oh, this is your rock bottom," but not even close. And what I've realized is, like, everybody's rock bottom is completely different. Everybody's rock bottom's completely different. I think I say it all the time. The more that we go through, the deeper our rock bottom is, because we can deal with a lot more. And so this wasn't even close to being my rock bottom. And so I was living out of my car, drinking myself to sleep at night. And I don't know if you know Olympic soccer, but Abby Wambach, she actually is from the town that I went to community college in. And so, like, her sister was in one of my classes. One of the professors had her as a student. And so I think that's pretty cool. Gym Class Heroes is from my town, too. Just throwing that out there. But so my grades were starting to slip like crazy. And so Thanksgiving of 2015, every time I would go to the house to see my kids and see her, we would argue.
Yep.
And so Thanksgiving came in 2015. I was like, you know what? Let me just go to my parents. I don't want to. I want to spend time with them for Thanksgiving, but I don't want an argument. And so I went to my parents, spent Thanksgiving there, and then I left the next day because I had to work. And so I head home, and mind you, I had a full tank of gas. Full tank of gas. I'm on the highway, about to hit my exit to go to work. My car dies out of nowhere, and I'm like, "Are you serious?" And I deliver pizzas. Like, how am I going to deliver pizzas when my car doesn't even work? So, call my boss. He's like, "Look, you can work inside the store today, and then we'll figure out from there." So I'm like, "Okay, work is good." He's like, "Just get here safe." So then I call my dad to tell him, like, "Look, I'm good. This is what happened." Even though my wife and I we had like tension, I would still keep her up to date of what things that were happening. So called her, was like, "Look, this is what's going on. Car died. I'll let you know what happens." So I go to work. And as I'm at work, so when I got to work, one of the girls that worked there, she's like, "I'll work in the store if you want to take my car and you can deliver with my car." So I was like, "Cool." So I go and I'm delivering and everything, get done with work. I had the tow truck. My boss picked me up from where I was. I called the tow truck. Tow truck brought the vehicle to work. And so it's sitting at work. And I had two options. I could either stay in my car that night, or I could go home. And we all know from my story so far, I've made the best decisions up to this point. So
Absolutely.
I chose to sleep in my car. I'm like, you know what? I'm gonna go to the club first. So I was gonna walk to the gas station, get something to drink, get liquor, and drink it, and go to the club. I'm crossing the street, and as I'm crossing the street, it's raining, which is crazy because the day I got kicked out of my parents' house, it was raining, and now it's raining this night. And so it was pouring rain. I'm crossing the street, and something told me, "Look to your right." I turn and I see two headlights and smash into me. And so I must have jumped because my kneecap shattered, my right kneecap shattered, and it split the bone right down the middle. And I was about to get up, and some dude ran up. He's like, "What are you doing? What are you doing? You just got hit by a car. Stay down." If I would have gotten up, the bone would have come right out my leg. So I'm like so grateful that this dude stopped me from getting up. So they helped me over to the side. I end up, the ambulance comes. I get in. I go to the hospital. When I get to the hospital, I asked them, "So am I able to go back to work tomorrow?" The doctor looked at me and laughed, which should already tell me that, okay, this is a bad injury. While I'm there, my parents came to see me, and my wife and kids came to see me, and I felt so like broken because I'm like, the people I've been pushing away for these months are the ones that came to see me. And so I end up getting surgery, go back home, and I'm like, well, I can't go back to school. And what's awesome about school is, remember I said my grades were plummeting. Now they cut that semester like it never happened. And so I still, in the school's eyes, had perfect, like outstanding grades. And so I was like, okay, what am I going to do? I can't go back to school. I can't walk. And at this time, this used to be the end of my story, because it's like, yeah, I started going to school, got my bachelor's, got my master's, started working at the homeless shelter, and then eventually became a student pastor. Bing, bada, boom. Here we are. We're good. But unfortunately, that was not the end, because I did get my degrees. I did start working at the homeless shelter. I remember seeing a bunch of cliches that people who've never been in addiction say to people in addiction. But I really got an eye and into addiction firsthand, like outside, being able to see it and how people acted and the way they presented themselves and things like that, and really gained a passion for helping people in addiction and that were homeless. Uh, so then I became a small group leader at a church for a youth group, um, and then was let go from the homeless shelter. And so after that, I went to a place called Hillside, and it worked with kids, but it was overnight. And so I would do my college stuff, and the only interaction that I had with the kids was if something bad happened. And so I'm like, I really don't like this because I want to, like, I'm doing this to help kids, not just deal with them when they're like mad and acting bad. So I left there, started working for a place called Urban League of Rochester. And while I was at Hillside, though, I was applying to places to become a student pastor. And so I found this one place. They said that I had everything that they were looking for except for experience. And so they kept me on as like intern while they were looking for a student pastor. But then COVID happened. And so I was working at Hillside during COVID. And for youth group, we were making videos and things like that. And when COVID came, when everything started coming back and becoming normal again, we were starting to have people come back to church and do youth group normal. We sat down and we looked. We were like, okay, this is a good time to reset and look at things we've been doing good, things we can improve on. And so we did a poll to parents, like, what's some things that you would like to see improved, and what suggestions. And one parent put have Antoine hire Antoine on as student pastor. And so I looked at it. I said to the one pastor, I was like, look at that, that's funny. And he's like, actually, about that, he's like, we said you don't have experience, but during COVID you've been gaining experience with us. And he's like, so we're gonna revisit you becoming a candidate for that. So eventually I became student pastor June 6th of 2021. I became student pastor, and so I was doing my thing, and like I said, that's where my story used to end. But my wife and I still had problems, and this is where this is the hard part about the story. So my wife and I still had problems, and all the time she would say, like, I want a divorce, but in that we were still doing stuff as a family. Going to Niagara Falls, going to the Adirondacks, like doing some nice stuff as a family, but there was still this tension. And so all the time she would say, I want a divorce, but I'm thinking, nah, like, it's the church. A lot of people, like, in church, frown on divorce, can't bring up that D word. And so I'm like, yo, like, we can make this work ourselves. We couldn't, though. Like, it was just so much pent up, like, resentment and anger. Like, we could not. We tried so many times to do it by ourselves, and we couldn't. And so one day, she said, I want a divorce, and it was after a big argument, and it was getting to the point where, like, we would argue so bad the kids would get scared. And my youngest, he was 9 at the time, he would run up into our 17-year-old's room and stay with him while we would be arguing, and I was just angry all the time, and like I'd always be pouring into work because when I poured into work, I didn't have to focus on what was going over here. So there was a lot of neglect on my end, just as a father and as a husband. And so this one time we argued, and she said, I want a divorce. And she went up to her room, and it was at this point, like, she would get up at probably like 3-4 o'clock to get ready for work. I would take her to work and then come home, get the kids ready, bring them to school, go to the gym, and then I would go to church to start my day. And so what would happen was I would stay up until probably like 1 o'clock in the morning, and I'd go upstairs, go to sleep, and so I was never going to bed at the same time. We were separate. And when she would get home, if I was home, she would always be in the room. I'd always be downstairs at my desk. And um, I she had gone upstairs after this argument, and I was just sitting there. I was like, I can't do this. And just the pain of continuing in this lie was so much greater than the thought of, are they going to let me go if I say we're getting a divorce? So I typed up this email to our lead pastor and the executive pastor who was over me, and I said, look, like, we've had this tension for years. We've tried to fix it ourselves, but we can't, and she wants a divorce. And so she said that, and she had given me again the ultimatum, like, it's either you or me. And so I left. And when I left, like, I left, and she said, if you're gone, you need to come get your stuff. And so she had gone to work. I went back to take the kids to school, and while I was waiting for the kids to get ready and for me to drop them off, or no, I got my stuff together, and then after I dropped them off to school, I went back and I picked up my stuff. And so then I went to the gym, and it was a Friday, so it was my day off, and I was just sitting there, and I was like, I don't know what to do. Like, I have all my stuff in my car. I don't know what to do. And so I texted my mom, and I was like, what are you guys doing? Can I stay there? Trina and I are separated. And so my mom called me. She's like, what are you doing? She said, come to our house. And so I drove about 45 minutes to their house. And it was Memorial Day of 2023, that weekend. So I had switched the bill for the phone, taken her phone off, taking her name off my bank account. Like, I did a lot that weekend. And so her and I argued the whole weekend. But it eventually got to the point where I was tired of driving 45 minutes, having to wake up at 6 a.m. to go take the kids to school and go to work. So I found an apartment. One of my students, her grandpa, had an apartment for, I think it was like $600 a month. And so I was like, yeah, and it was furnished. 1 bedroom, so I moved in there. And every morning I was picking up the kids for school, bringing the kids to school, and I was talking to all these people, and people were like, oh, she's holding the kids over your head. She's holding the kids over your head. And so October of 2023, I told her that I wasn't taking the kids to school anymore. And that caused so much disruption. But prior to this, August to September, I was doing Uber, and I ended up picking up this one girl, and she happened to smoke crack. She was a prostitute, was smoking crack, and I was like, I don't know what made this go into my mind, but again, I was looking for a place to belong. I was like, you know what? I bet I could shut this trap down. I can go in, I can talk about church, and I can talk about Jesus, and I can shut this trap down. Like, I got this. Imagine I shut this trap down, then shut more, and people are like, be careful. They're like, you're in a real vulnerable spot right now. I'm like, I'm good. They're like, okay, just be careful. And so I'm hanging out with these people now. During the day, I'm doing my student pastor stuff. At night, I'm hanging out with these people, driving them around while they're smoking crack. I'm sitting there with them. And so the funny thing is, one time, this girl, before I was able to start going into the trap, I would sit outside. And one time I texted her, I was like, what do you need? She said, I really could go for a pizza. So I went to Little Caesars, got her a cheese pizza with pineapple on it. And so I was like, I brought it to her, and she's like, I'm sending this dude out. So he comes out, and he looks at me. He's like, you're that dude from Open Door Mission, that preacher man. And I was like, yup, that's me. And so I give him the pizza. He brings it to her, and she texts me, and she's like, apparently you have a nickname. And I said, what's that? she said preacher. I was like, okay, whatever. So then eventually, like a week later, they're like, tell him he can come in. So she's like, just come up, knock on the door. So I knock on the door. They're like, who? And I'm like, preacher. And they're like, oh, preacher. And so that's how I got my nickname, preacher. Um, and so um, here we are. I'm hanging out with them and everything. And one thing they always told me, they're like, preacher, don't do this. They're like, it has ruined our life. Like, please don't pick this up. And they're like, you give us hope that there's something more. And they're like, you're sitting here as a pastor, and most people in a church would judge us. And they're like, you're sitting here loving us and treating us like human beings. And little did they know, I was getting more out of hanging out with them than they were getting from hanging out with me, because I couldn't, like, I felt distant and rejected from people at church, and I felt like I could connect with these people that were using. And again, that goes into I was trying to find a place to belong, and I did. And so one time, my wife and I were arguing after I told her I'm not taking the kids to school anymore. And so we were arguing all day, and she said something like, you won't see the kids again, something like that. And that broke me. And so as I'm sitting there and I'm just broken, I see the false joy on these people's faces as they're taking hits. And so this girl set her bong down, and she used to smoke crack out of a bong. I picked it up and I took a hit. And she was like, nah, she's like, what are you doing? What are you doing? She's like, if you're going to do it, you might as well do it right. And so she told me to hold my breath. I held my breath. It spread all over my head, and everything went silent. And I remember saying, like, when I felt that, I stopped and I said, do you guys hear that? And they were like, what? I said, nothing. And I had so much going through my head that when I felt that, I was like, this is that peace I was looking for. And so, like, back when I worked at the homeless shelter, I'd always talk about, like, oh, you're chasing the first high. Or like, I finally understood what everybody meant when they said they kept chasing that first high, because after that, every time I took a hit, it was to try to feel that feeling again. And it never came. And I would try to do more. I tried to do more and more, and I just couldn't get that feeling. And I was like, I was broken, because I'm like, I want to see my kids, and I couldn't. And so I kept doing more and more. And so I was doing all this, and then eventually December came, and I had left the apartment I was in. So already my life was starting to go downhill. Like, you can tell at work, I'm not like as motivated as I was. I was starting to fall asleep because I'm up all night. Like, my collars are starting to be like down here and everything. Like, I was a wreck, but I thought I was good, and I thought I was hiding it. And so December, like, I would let this girl use my car at times. And one day, we were staying at a hotel. We had bought like $400 worth of crack, and we were just smoking it to the face, like. And she took the car, and she wouldn't bring it back. And she dropped me off at home. It was like, I'll be back so you can go to work. And I was supposed to have a meeting with my supervisor, with the pastor above me, and she didn't come back. And I'm like, yo, bring me my car. And she didn't come back. And so then I'm sitting there, and this one dude comes, and she owed him money, because a couple days before that, she stole all his money, spent his money. And so he comes looking for her. He steals my phone. So now I don't even have a phone to contact people. And I'm like, what the heck is going on? And so then the dude, I was living at this apartment, paying like $150 a month for rent, or a week for rent. And this dude would be like, he would sell crack out of it. And he would come up to me. He'd be like, hey, I'm going out real quick. Can you hold these bags? And when people come to the door, just give them that and collect the money. I'm like, yeah, I got you, bro. Little did I, like, bro was having me work the trap house. And I thought I was helping out a friend. And so he found out that she was bringing it to a chop shop. And so he calls the place. He's like, yo, I hear you have my friend's vehicle there. He's like, if you touch it in any way and it does not look like how his car looks right now, he's like, I'm gonna come there and burn your establishment to the ground. So dude wouldn't touch it. So this girl brings it into 2 towns away and doesn't realize the guy she's bringing it to, he grew up in the same town as me. I know a bunch of his family, and so he calls me. He's like, yo, preach, I got your car here. He's like, do you want me to come get you tomorrow? And I was like, yeah, come pick me up. So she's there with this other guy, and he comes and picks me up with a couple more people. We go back. The look on her face when she sees me is like, and so we go, I get my car back. We leave. She gets in the car with the other guy. We go back to the city. And then I end up being done with her. And I end up going back to this guy's house and I meet this other girl. And so when I'm coming back, I get back to where I am and I start hanging out with this girl, her sister, and her sister's boyfriend, husband. And so we start hanging out all the time. And it becomes January. And the thing about them is not only did they smoke hard and crack, but they smoked heroin as well. Mm-hmm. And so they were always mixing both. And so we would smoke and I'd sit there and still be awake and they'd be nodded out. And so I never liked my car lights being on, because especially at night, because I'm like, yo, we're a beacon to the cops. Come here, we're right here. And so one night we scraped for res out of the pipes, and they had 2 piles of res. They had one with just crack and one with crack and heroin. And the crazy thing is, since they couldn't see, they put the crack and heroin pile accidentally into my pipe. And I took a hit of it, and I remember the feeling from the oxys from when I had broken my leg, and I said, yo, I took the wrong pipe. And next thing I know, my head's hanging out the door, I'm throwing up, I'm cold, they had taken my shirt off, threw water on me, and they had to use 4 Narcans to bring me back. And that wasn't my rock bottom. And so I eventually went to Colorado, stepped down, or I told the church, look, the divorce is getting to me. I can't do this. I need to go get help. So they sent me to Colorado for 10 days to a retreat there. Didn't have electronics or anything. When I was there, I said, I need to step down. I can't keep living this double life. So I came back and I stepped down from being student pastor. And that's when it went crazy. I was living at my parents, and then I met this girl who happened to be the ex-girlfriend of the guy who the other girl brought my car to. So I met this girl and started living in her hotel, started staying in her hotel room with her. And then my parents told me, yo, if you're going to be living here, you have to come back at a decent time. And I was like, well, my cat and I will leave. And so we go stay at this girl's hotel room. She ends up sleeping with my best friend, the one who I lived at his and his mom's house when I got kicked out of my parents' house. So we were close, and she ended up sleeping with him. So I used that as an excuse to now move back to the city and start smoking again. So I went. I didn't have the church anymore. Had now had this feeling on my back of rejection, and so I went deep. And one thing I had told the 3 that were in my car when I OD'd, I told them, I am going to get you guys off the street no matter what I have to do. And so when I went back, I found them. They started living in my car again. But now each time I would take a hit, I would feel chest pains. And so I was like, yo, I can't do this. And so I'm sitting there taking hits. And I just think, I remember one time this girl, we saw her at the gas station. She was like, yo, I was like, you want to come smoke with us? She said, sure. We went to this one trap. My friends couldn't get into the trap because they had something going on with the dealer. So I give this girl $40. She goes and she steals it. Mm. And so I'm like, I was going to let it go. The people in my car were like, you can't let this go. if you let this go, everybody's going to be like, oh, you can get one over on Preacher. You can get. So I was like, so I put a green light out on her. And I was like, just let her know, like, if you see her, do what you have to. Let her know I want my money back. So one day I see her walking. I'm like, she saw me. She came over. She gave me my money, and I was like, okay. So I deaded it. But then I started thinking, like, how can a person fall so far? Like, because there was this one dealer, I found out from his wife that they used to live in Florida and they had their own landscaping business, and then they ended up coming to New York and getting into prostitution and selling drugs. This dude has bodies to his name, like just all this stuff. And I look at that, and then I look at me, and I'm like, how can a person go from being a model citizen to now like being arrested multiple times and having this huge rap sheet? And I realized after the girl gave me the money back, and I was like, man, if someone would have jumped her and I would have got my money, that would have told me I can go even further. And I'm like, that's how you go that far. I said it at the beginning, one bad decision at a time. And each bad decision is worse than the one before. Before you know it, you're so far down. And that's why I say, like, none of us just wake up one day and say, I want to get into addiction. It's multiple choices and multiple situations. And so I had this sitting on me, and then April 7th, I was messaging my son on Xbox, and he said, if you really love us, you'll go get the help that you need. And so that was sitting on me. And then, like I said, each time I would take a hit, and mind you, at this time, I went from, I was tired of carrying a bong, so I was smoking from a pipe. But remember, I started smoking from a bong. So the amount you can put in a pipe is way different than the amount you can put in a bong. So I'd take a hit and I wouldn't even feel anything. And so not only am I having chest pains, but I'm not even getting high when I have chest pains. And so I'm like, why am I doing this? Like, my next hit could be the last one, and I didn't even get high. And so April 13th of 2024, that's my clean day. I stopped smoking. But I was still living on the street. And so at this time, my car, the battery was so dead that as soon as I would turn the car off, it wouldn't turn back on. And the only way I could turn it back on is if I called my insurance or put in an insurance claim. I have USAA, and they would come out and jumpstart my car. So, like, this tow truck driver knew me, like, by face. When he saw the claim in, he'd roll up. He'd be like, "How you guys doing?" And so one night, April 16th, this happened, and it was or April 15th. We were sitting there. It was nighttime, and I was like, I had turned the car off, and then I forgot to roll the windows up, and I was like, crap, and I didn't have a coat. All of a sudden, it started to rain, and I'm like, are you serious? And so I'm sitting there, and my phone's dead, so I can't charge the phone to get the truck there to jumpstart the car. And we're sitting in the Burger King parking lot, and I'm like, I can't get inside because it's closed, so I have to wait till morning. So I put up a blanket so that the water doesn't fully hit me. But I'm sitting there, and at any other time before this, I would have smoked, and I would have been fine. But here I am, having been 2 days not smoking. My mind, and I can only account it to the fact that now I have this clarity in my mind. I was thinking, what am I doing? Like, I'm sitting out here with these people nodded out, like, and so I said, you know what, I'm done with this. So as soon as it became morning, I went in, charged my phone, and had the car jumped. And I was like, look, guys, I love you guys, but I need to go get help. And I texted my parents. I messaged my dad, and I said, look, and I was straight up, and I said, this is what I've been doing. And I said, I don't deserve your forgiveness at all. Like, and I said, I'm sorry for everything, like, that I've been doing. I don't deserve your forgiveness, and I can understand if, like, you guys don't want to talk to me at all. And he said, we forgive you. And that's all I needed to hear. And I was like, I'm going to get help. And so I told them, I said, look, I love you guys, but I thought about the fact that I told them I'll do whatever I can to get you out. And I went to them, I said, look, I can't get you out if I'm still here. I said, I have to fix myself. Uh, and so I said, I need to drop you off somewhere. I'm sorry. And so I brought him to this one house. And whenever I would sit, I want to be able to breathe. And so I couldn't sleep or anything. And so we get to this house and I go, and mind you, I can't shut off my car. So I left my car and I'm trying to like situate so I can breathe. They're like, they're a preacher, come inside and go to sleep a little bit. So I go and I sit on this couch and like I can breathe, and I haven't slept in like 2 days. And so I'm like, I sit down and I pass out, and it's hot in there. So I take off my shirt. So I'm sitting there asleep, no shirt. I wake up, they're gone. And I'm like, and my car is gone too. My car got stolen yet again. And I'm like, fuck. And so I'm like, you know what? It's nighttime. I'll deal with it tomorrow morning. Let me just get some sleep. So my shirt's off. I set it down. I wake up. This dude's sleeping in the chair next to me when I wake up the first time. He had thrown up and everything, threw up on his shirt and all that. Wake up, bro's gone, and so is my shirt. And I'm like, what the fuck? Like, I'm like, not only is my car gone, but my shirt's gone now too. And so, and there was no Wi-Fi. So I asked the lady who lives there, I'm like, yo, I need Wi-Fi. And so she gets a Wi-Fi password, and I start messaging them. The only way they could communicate on Wi-Fi is they were in like 3 different areas. And I said, I know they're not leaving the area. They have to get their drugs, and they have to connect to Wi-Fi. So I'm sitting there. Each time I see the green light pop up on Facebook Messenger, I message, bring my fucking car back. I need my car. They won't. So finally, the night, like it's probably like 4 in the afternoon on the 16th of April. I'm like, you know what? Fuck this. The guy comes back. I tell him, I said, give me my fucking shirt. So he takes off the shirt, gives it to me. It's raining again. I wrap this blanket around me, and I just start walking. And I can't breathe. And so I'm walking probably like 5 minutes, stopping to catch my breath, walking again. And finally I see him in the Burger King parking lot, and I tell him, I said, move the fuck over. And I said, we're dropping your shit off now. So we go to this lot. They're like, oh, we can stay at this house behind us. So I'm like, you have an hour to clean out your stuff from my car. It's pouring rain. And they're cleaning everything out, putting things in bags. Then they stop. They're like, they just said we can't stay here. I'm like, well, you're not putting your shit back in my car. I said, and I was kind of mean, but you just stole my fucking car. Like, I was heated. So I told them, I don't care, put it somewhere. They put it under tires. And I said, you have one more place to choose. I said, you better make that place good, because wherever we go, you're staying there. And so they find a place. I said, you have 30 more minutes to clean out my car. They clean it out. The girls get out, and the one husband comes up, and he's like, yo, can I get a ride? And I was like, yes. Because he stopped them at Burger King and had $20 in his hand but wouldn't give it to them, so that they would, because they needed gas, and wouldn't give it to them, so they had to shut the car off to reserve gas, which means they couldn't move. And so I was like, yeah, I can give you a ride. So I gave him a ride somewhere. Then I went to the Veterans Outreach Center in the town, and they had a men's meeting that night. And I walked in, and the first thing I heard them say was, what you say here stays here. And I sat down, and I said, I just left three people who saved my life. I left them on the street. And I've been smoking crack. And I just poured out everything. And I just felt so I felt so ashamed and so embarrassed. And I was like, and I have no place to stay, and I want help. And so they told me, they were like, look, come back after this meeting. We want you to go. So there was a veterans house down the road. They're like, drive down there, park in the parking lot. And one of the guys who was in the meeting is like, I live there. I'll bring you out some food. And he's like, and then they're like, tomorrow morning, we want you to come back here and let them know you need a place to stay. So I did that, came back the next day. and I went and started doing this stuff to get a place. Talked to a VA liaison, and she came and picked me up, and she's like, okay, because I told her my car won't start, so I need to leave it here for now. So I couldn't, like I said, I couldn't breathe. So before she placed me, she wanted to take me to the VA just to make sure it wasn't COVID. Um, they couldn't check me because it was probably like 6 o'clock by the time she was able to get me. So she was like, let's go to urgent care. When I got there, they told me I had fluid around my heart and lungs. And they were like, you have pneumonia. I was like, what? So they put me in the hospital from April 18th till May 1st. And so I was in the hospital from April 18th to May 1st. Um, and that is really like where everything has really stemmed from, like, because May 1st of last year was, I got out of there, went to a veterans house, found out I could be a peer advocate, and started working at Nike for a little bit before I became a peer. And October 1st became a peer, and now just got supervisor, a recovery center supervisor. And so, like, my parents or my kids still don't talk to me, but I believe that'll come. I'm rebuilding my relationship with my parents slowly, but I think the most important thing I've done is I've surrounded myself with people that see my value and see my worth, and I make the most of every day. And I just live by, like, I didn't come into this recovery to live a mediocre life. Like, I say the same energy I put into getting high is the same energy I put into this recovery journey. And so every day is a fight. And I know it's cliche, but I really like to live that one day at a time. And I may not be where I want to be, but I'm sure as hell not where I used to be. And for today, uh, that's fine with me because it's a lot better than where I used to be.
Absolutely, absolutely. It's a hell of a story, man. It's a hell of a story. You've been through hell and back multiple times. You know, and I think, you know, I think a lot of times that our stories are rooted in the things that happened to us in childhood, early childhood, childhood trauma and stuff like that. And what I heard is that feeling of not fitting in, and desperately needing that validation of fitting in, man. And I can relate to that wholeheartedly, man. So many decisions I made in my life, whether it was an active addiction or whether it was when I was in the army as well, like I did shit to fit in.
Hmm.
And because you don't know where you belong at all, and you said it perfectly. You were too black for the white crew, and you were too white for the black crew, right? Like you just didn't fit in. And on top of that, man, like just a simple fact that you had a father figure, but you didn't have your father.
Yeah.
Yeah. That's the fucking hard part, man. That is the absolute hard part. I understand that, man. Um, and so I can definitely understand that and relate. And bouncing around from relationship to relationship, I did it too, man. I did it too, and it's hard because
My dad used to call me a serial dater.
yeah, yeah, man. I mean, I used to jump, dude. I'm telling you, man. Like the time between my first divorce and my second marriage, my remarriage, was mere hours.
Hmm.
Like, dog, I went from getting divorced at noon to remarried at 3.
Hmm.
Shit, you not. I get it, man. And it's just that seeking that validation, somebody that'll love you, right? Somebody
Absolutely.
that'll see you for you, but really, you didn't see you for you.
Absolutely.
And I'm thinking that, and from what I'm hearing now, man, you're seeing you for you, and you're
Hmm.
learning to love yourself.
Absolutely.
And that's important, man. That self-love is very fucking important. That self-worth is very important, man. And what you're doing, the work that you're doing, man, that's very important. The fact that you went, man, I can't tell you how many people I know have gone into situations like you have when you know when you walked into it to the trap house and you were like, oh, I'm gonna be with these people, right? Like I have one of my best friends who was a medic in my during my first second deployment. He was like, I got addicted to fucking heroin. I got addicted to meth because I thought that I couldn't get addicted to it.
Yeah.
Did it once and it sucked me right in. And that's just a testament, man. And I'm so fucking happy that you are where you are in life now, and I'm so proud of you because that is not an easy life to get out. And you almost didn't make it out, but you're fucking living proof that it works, man.
And that's I tell everybody like people are like, how can you be like, I live in what used to be an old hotel. Like my room is literally an old hotel room. And
Yeah.
people are like, how can you be happy in that tiny thing? And I'm like, because I'm alive. Like everything that has happened from the moment I came back from ODing, I'm like, is a blessing. Because I'm not supposed to be here.
And happiness is a state of mind. It's not material things. It's peace, you know, and you're hunting that peace. And that is so important. And, you know, the kid thing, and it's going to come, you know. I have a 12-year-old daughter that would barely speak to me because of the things, you know what I mean? And now I had the opportunity to go drop her ass off at the fucking airport to go get stationed in Germany, right? Like, it works if you work it. Dude, I hate cliches. I hate the big the cliches. I hate the all of the sayings, dude, because like, but it's true, right?
Absolutely.
Like, it works if you work it, right? And like, trust the process. Don't leave before the miracle happens. All that shit. And like, you are living proof of a miracle, man. Like, living fucking proof of a miracle. And I just want to, you know, I want to take a moment and say, like, I'm so goddamn proud of you.
Thank you.
And I'm so grateful to call you brother. It's a big story to tell. And you've got big things in front of you, man. And never give up. Never give up.
Thank you. Now, one thing I didn't say, and I really like, because I'm big on rock bottom and those decisions that have gotten us to where we are. And a lot of people say, well, what's rock bottom? And I am a firm believer that rock bottom is when we decide to stop digging.
Yep.
Like, and that's why everybody's rock bottom can be different, but it's for everybody. It's where we say, you know what, enough is enough. And when we get to rock bottom, we have two choices. Am I going to stay there or am I going to start climbing out?
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. Well, brother, I appreciate you sharing your story and I appreciate your vulnerability. That is not easy. It never is.
I appreciate it for letting me share the story.
Anytime, man. And I look forward to watching your growth. I do. I look forward to watching you grow as not just a peer, but as a human being, as a brother in recovery. And I look forward to seeing the continued redemption story of Antoine Evans.
Thank you. We'll have to get you on Preacher's Corner.
Absolutely. And everybody, I want to say thank you for sitting and hanging out with us for this time. Thank you for joining us. And just remember, be kind to yourself, be gracious to yourself, and love yourself. You are worthy, you are worth it, and you are loved. Much love. Alrighty, how was that?
That was awesome. Yo, I love how